Hello and welcome back. Once again, this is Extrafresh and you're watching part 2 of the BIOS walkthrough for the Maximus 3G motherboard. This is where we left off in part 1. We set up all the normal features in the way that I like them, and I talked you through all that. And the one thing that I did skip is where I want to begin with part 2, which is the overclocking part of this walkthrough. The Asus Oc Profile is where we're going to start, which is a way to save all your settings so you don't lose them and have to do them all again when you're going into an unstable overclock. So this is a very valid, very useful thing. You always use it, and as you can see there's a lot of stuff that is already used. I'm going to type in, I'm going to call this the video profile, and I'm going to save it to the first unused bank, which is profile 4. There we go. You see that it is saved right now, and you can see the performance numbers that we have set right now. I'm going to show you how to load from this profile something else. Load from, say we load from bank 8, which is a 4200 megahertz profile. There we go. We have all kinds of different performance numbers. And we're going to load right back from the profile that we just saved, number 4. There we go. And it's as easy as that. Those are the settings we had. We're going to reboot right now. And after that we're going overclocking. This reboot gives me the time to get a little disclaimer in there. Obviously we're overclocking, which means we're running out of specification, and you're voiding your warranty if you do this. You might damage or blow up or otherwise destroy stuff that is valuable to you, so please do at your own discretion and don't simply copy what I do here. There we go. First of all, let's go to the CPU configuration. This is the way that your processor is set up. You can access it in two ways. One is through the extreme tweaker menu right here, and one is through the advanced menu, CPU configuration. It goes to the exact same screen. I'll use this way. First thing we encounter is the CPU ratio setting. I'll scroll down a bit to see how much ground we have to cover. I don't have time for all of this in this video, so I'll just refer to Google for all the other stuff. The CPU ratio setting is worth explaining. It's basically the multiplier, and if you set it to 21, which is what I do, it's a good overclocking. Works best on the uneven multipliers on the platform. It's strange, but for me it's been true. Mileage may vary, obviously. The C1E support, disable, 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 and disable. For all of those I can point you to Google. This one I'll also disable. The thermal monitoring is TM. I'm going to enable it. Leave it enabled. It's basically going to protect my processor from becoming too hot. The HT technology, which is hyper-threading, I'm going to disable it. It doesn't work really well for me. And this is pretty cool. It allows you to run on either one or just 2 cores of the processor instead of all of them, and that's useful if you're trying to reach maximum overclocks or EP numbers, but for 24/7 overclocks it's hardly useful because it'll always cost you performance, obviously. Speed step I'm going to disable. And for C-state, there's another thing that's useful to tell you. On the older motherboards, this auto setting that is set by default will use the C1 way of C-state switching, and that means that it'll hurt turbo boost performance. It actually makes quite a big difference, around 10 to 15% in single or dual threaded applications. So if you're using this motherboard and you're using C-state tech enabled, always set it to C6 to be on the safe side. C6 will use the full turbo mode. I'm going to leave it on auto because I'll disable it and it'll be gone anyway. There we go. I'm going to show you the way that the Overclocked Tuner can work. The auto setting is basically what it's on default. Obviously, XMP is extreme memory profile. It just follows a profile stored in the memory banks. CPU level up or memory level up follows settings that are stored right here. You can select these settings, but I won't use them. I'll use the manual setting, as you can see. Right. I'm going to go down to the base clock and I'm going to set it to 200, which is quite high and may not even be possible on all systems, but I'll use it anyway because it's been possible for me. This Dram Frequency, it looks like you're keying in a frequency right here, but you're actually setting a ratio to the base clock. So in this case I have a choice of ratio of 8 times this base clock, and you can see that if I change the base clock by pressing minus or plus, the DDR3 frequency changes along with it. And once I reach 200, there it throws an exception, or it throws a warning for voltages. I know what I'm doing, so I'll just delete that. Once again, for the QPI frequency, it looks like you're setting a frequency, but you're actually setting a multiplier. There we go. The auto tuning, worth a mention because it actually works, but aside from that, auto overclocking is useless. Anyway, so there we go. The DRAM timing control, you can set all the timings you'd ever want to set. I leave everything on auto. The clock amplitude and clock skew, I refer to you to Google, and these ones, extreme OV and LN2 mode, will allow you to set extra voltage outside of what is even discouraged on normal cooling methods. Load line calibration, use this. You set it on to enabled because it virtually eliminates V-droop, which is a good thing. It helps stability on high overclocks. This I'm using 1.45. I'm using a water cooling setup to keep everything cool, so don't try this at home without proper cooling. It's not that extreme, but it is. Whoa, that was the wrong key. Wait. It's not that extreme, but please try not to overheat your system too much. IMC voltage, I'm setting it to 1.4 because I have a very high base clock, so I also need a lot of voltage on these IMC voltage. If you're using a lower base clock with a higher multiplier, you still need a high CPU voltage, but you can lower the IMC voltage, which is the same as the V to T voltage for other manufacturers. This one doesn't need to be raised much. I set it to the default, but I'll lock it there. And the DRAM voltage needs a bit explaining because the Asus board has by default selected 1.8 volt, which is too much, and it does cause some stability and compatibility issues on some occasions. So please always, even if you're not overclocking, always go to this DRAM voltage and set it to 1.65 or the setting that is displayed on your memory modules. So please go there and reset that value, because 1.8 is too much and it does cause problems. CPU spread spectrum, I actually was able to pronounce that, but it's especially meant to be impossible, so I'm going to disable that. And then we get back to the Asus Oc Profile. I can store it, a video to, and I'm going to save it over that other profile. It's done, and we can go to reset F10, and when we get back in the BIOS, we've come full circle, and that's also exactly the same point where we started video 1. I hope this was useful and informative to you, and if so, or if not so, if it was too long or whatever, let me know so I can possibly do better in the future. There we are. We're running at 42 megahertz, 42 gigahertz, whatever. We're running very fast, and watch my other reviews later on that I'll post later on, and see you later. Bye bye.